Hello, welcome in. And I'm also, my gosh, I have like multiple devices. Hi, user 446, welcome in. Hi, No, welcome. I need to change this. Hi, welcome you all. I'm still just getting set up. Hi, JMs, welcome in. Talk. I'm about to get started in a second. Hey. Hi Rode, welcome in. You are here. Yeah, I'm going live on the new account that I had to make for the TikTok shop as well as my original account. So I'm going to try to see how I can merge the two. I'm also live on YT. So I got a lot going on right now. I've never done this before in this way, so please forgive me y'all as I get used to the fact that I have three devices right now. But we're going to be talking about mental health and healing. I'll be able to answer questions that you all have. I'll also be discussing my book, which is a 5-star rated book for healing and growth. And it's been out now for about a year and a half. And there are many reviews. It's available, as you can see, on TikTok shop. It's also available elsewhere. But yeah, we're going to be talking about it and answering questions and reading excerpts. Hey, Savannah. Thanks for checking it out. For those who are checking out the book, especially if it's your first time, one of the things that I want you to know is that the book is still for all humans, right? So it does have representation for the Black community to help fight stigma and also just to increase representation within the mental health field, to normalize mental health, I don't want to say treatment, but mental health education for everyone, right? And one of the ways that we do that is by using representation so people feel seen and safe enough to learn new information that maybe challenges what they were taught. So that's what my book aims to do. But my readers are of all different races and backgrounds. And the first page of the book is a special message to my non-Black readers, which was my invitation to people of all backgrounds to still learn the mental health knowledge in the book because it applies to everyone. Plus, if you are not Black and you read this book, not only are you going to learn valuable mental health skills and knowledge to manage your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, but you are also going to increase your social awareness and self-awareness so that you can be better to yourself and other people. So that's a win-win-win across the board. We have to learn about how our interactions with one another affect one another, and educating ourselves helps us do less harm. So it's important that we learn about other people's lived experiences. But I'm happy to answer any questions about that. Hold on. I'm still trying to get this other live going. So give me a second. I'm talking, my brain's going a million miles per minute. I know I said hi to Savannah, but hi again. I'm more centered saying it. So hi. Talk to a psychologist. Okay. This is like an experiment today, seeing how this goes. Okay. I am now also live on my other account, which is my larger account. Hi, Marie. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome. I think I'm going to try to merge the two. I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. I kind of want to merge. Is that going to be weird though for you all to be seeing two different angles of me talking? That might be. Maybe I shouldn't do that. I don't know. Because I have another TikTok page which used to be the one where I would sell my book, but I had to make another account for that purpose because of some stuff with TikTok. So that's why I have the two separate accounts. But my other page has almost 50,000 followers. But this one is for my shop in particular. But I figured since I'm going live, I might as well broadcast both places as well as elsewhere that I can't say while I'm on TikTok. That starts with a Y. But yeah, let's get into it, y'all, now that you all are in here. So welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Abena Berry. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I'm also the author of this book. Oh, I need to change the, there we go. Hold on. Is that better? Because you can read it. Trying to make sure it's in frame as much as possible. There we go. I'm also the author of this 5-star rated self-help book. And so we're going to be discussing our humanness today, answering questions. You all are welcome to ask questions in the comments, but I also want to kind of do what I used to do for people who have been on lives with me before, which is to read different excerpts from the book and answer questions that way as well and get the conversation going. Hi, Jessica. Good to see you. Welcome in. Welcome in. I am streaming multiple places, so this is why you all see me looking all over the place. But I am here. I'm present. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the comments over there as well. Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, let's get into it. Well, how's everybody doing? Also, hi, user 771. Welcome in. It's so crazy. So this new page is moving more than my actual page, which is interesting. Okay, well, I guess because it's a shop, right? That's probably why. But yeah, let's do a little bit of reading. I know it's been a while. For people who are new here, the way that you can see the table of contents is by clicking on the link that should be pinned at the bottom of the screen that will open the TikTok shop. And then all you have to do is swipe through the photos, and then that way you can see the table of contents. Let me know what you want me to read. I cover so much in this book. I cover anxiety management, grief, how to manage relationships, trauma responses. The list goes on and on and on. So I'd be happy to read some excerpts that people are interested in. For the people over here, hi y'all that are on my original page. I'm also on my other TikTok page right now, talking about the book simultaneously. So you'll see me looking both places. I was going to merge the two, but I worried that would be a little weird because then you would be seeing me at two different angles side by side. And that feels like it would be weird. So instead, I'm just keeping them separate for right now. And I'm also on thank you, Rode, for going over to the Y page. I can't say what that is right now, but y'all know. But yeah, so let's do a little bit of reading. Like I said, you all can see the table of contents by just clicking down here, swiping through the photos, and letting me know. I'm also happy to just kind of pick two different topics from the book and then let you all comment and let me know what you would like to hear about. I would love to read about something that I don't read about as often when on live. Maybe, let's see, what can we do? We can do confirmation bias. We can do, I don't feel like that one's requested as often, but it's really important to understand. Hi, Miss Red, welcome in. Hi, Lauren. You said, my daughter is out of town and has a copy of your book, and I'll have to be all ears today. Oh, yes. Well, I'm glad you're here. You'll get to hear a little bit of it today, nonetheless. Goddess, welcome in. Hello. We're here talking about healing and growth. Okay. How about this? So I think what I want to do is, and it can be on any of the accounts, why don't you all let me know something that you're struggling with right now or have a question about? And then that way I'm sure whatever you ask is probably a part of my book that relates to it. So what are people kind of struggling with right now in terms of whether emotions or relationships or anything like that? Scrap to the races, welcome in. Jazziness, welcome. Hello. Thank you for sharing the live, Lauren. I appreciate you. Nicole, welcome in. Let's see. Sasha, welcome in. Okay. Fawn, hello. Let's see. I might just choose something myself. Whatever calls out to me. I might just do a whole, wherever the page stops. You know what? This one's a really good one because I did a TikTok about it very recently. And a lot of people commented and talked about how this was hard for them to do, which is avoiding emotional reasoning. And so I think a lot of people don't know what the term is, but it's something that we experience all the time. So emotional reasoning is when we allow our initial reaction to a situation to essentially be taken as fact based on how it made us feel. And sometimes that can set us up for irrational behaviors or irrational thinking about a situation. And then things kind of go downhill from there. So we don't want that. So I'm going to read the little excerpt from the book that's about emotional reasoning. so we can learn a little more about what it is and how to avoid it, because it's not a good thing. So the easiest way to think about it is it's something that's going to encourage us to engage in more irrational like behavior, and then that can really harm our relationships. Okay, I need to learn how to cope and deal with it all. Got you, Jessica. Perfect. Okay, so I'll read this and then we'll also talk more about that as well, but just coping in general. But this relates to coping, right? Being able to better interpret your experiences so that you're able to navigate and respond differently is a really important part of coping. So this is on page 157. It's in chapter 8, right? Yeah. Chapter 8, which I titled The Distorted Mind. So this chapter is all about basically thought management. And the quote that I put for this one is, beware of your thoughts so you can be aware of them, because a lot of us were not taught. Thank you so much, user 649. How are you? Good to see you. Because a lot of us were not taught how to manage our thoughts. We grew up in environments where we were not able to practice, right? Really learning how to, whether it be express ourselves or manage our emotions, because so many people did kind of grow up being treated like they were supposed to be seen and not heard. And then the generational trauma that has like perpetuated, unfortunately, people not being able to develop the skills that they need to really thrive. So the distorted mind. We're gonna go back to emotional reasoning. So in my professional experience, emotional reasoning is a cognitive distortion that many people frequently struggle with, especially if they are not aware of what they are doing. It's also the one I used to be most guilty of, which is true because most of us are guilty of this one a lot. And because of this, I remain mindful of avoiding it as much as possible. Simply put, this is when we assume our emotions always represent how life is. And we can all think of times, I got you, Savannah. Yep. We can all think of times where we have been guilty of this. This is something that happens to us all. And I also want to help people like decrease feelings of shame around these things, because these are natural human phenomena that we're supposed to be learning how to manage. But when we've been taught to be defensive, we're not able to really respond properly or break these patterns. And so it just continues to kind of dictate outcomes in our life, and we don't want that, right? So emotional reasoning happens. What we want to be able to do is notice when it's happening and correct. Right? So simply put, this is when we assume our emotions always represent how life is. The problem is that we fail to consider other evidence or information when we reason this way. So that's why we don't want to do it. Here are some examples of emotional reasoning. So these are like quotes that I put to help you get the idea of what this looks like. So the first one is, I feel like I burden everyone, so I don't want to burden them more by discussing my problems. I'm sure we all can think of times where we've heard people say they don't want to be a burden to the people in their life, right? And it's preventing them from getting their needs met or getting the support that they deserve. And it's also depriving the people who love them from being able to be there for them. Right? So that's emotional reasoning. When we say things like, I feel like I burden everyone, so I don't want to burden them more by discussing my problems. Another one is, I think they are mad at me. I must have done something wrong, right? A lot of times when hi, Trinae, good to see you too. A lot of times when we dive a little deeper, we'll realize that we don't have a lot of evidence to support the fact of like why we think people are angry at us about something. And this is again why emotional reasoning can be so dangerous. We are, just because we feel something, it doesn't mean that that's what's happening in reality. It's true that we're feeling it, but it doesn't mean that that's actually what's going on. So we have to be willing to get more information. Then another example would be, I feel so stupid, I'm an idiot. Right? People often use a lot of self-deprecating language when they maybe feel uncomfortable or frustrated by the outcome of a situation. So we also have to be like careful about that, because we can be accidentally conditioning ourselves and our brain and our mind to see ourselves that way. Then we'll be even more reactive when we make mistakes, and not in a good way, right? Failing to like learn from those moments, and instead it just kind of accidentally destroying our own self-esteem, which isn't good. Then another example is I feel worthless. I can't do anything right. And then lastly, and the last one that I had here for the quotes was, it feels like no one could ever love me, so I guess I'll be alone forever. Most of the time we're saying these things as like a hyperbole, right? We're just having a lot of intense emotion. And so we're speaking this way to ourselves. But the problem is that when we do that without checking ourselves, and also when we do it very frequently, it is impacting us. Words are not just words, they're very powerful influences over our mind. It's like putting a spell over yourself. So we have to find a way to like validate what we feel without taking it to an extreme that is going to harm us in the long run, right? And dig us into a deeper hole, basically. Okay, so let's keep reading. And this is like a short little excerpt from this part of the book. So I'll probably just read it through, and then you all can let me know if you have any like questions. So the main reason many of us fall into the trap of emotional reasoning is because our emotions do communicate valuable information. But just like in the game of telephone, which most of us have all played the game of telephone, and we know how quickly the message gets messed up, right, as time goes on. Just like in the game of telephone, we sometimes fail to interpret the message accurately. When we have an emotional shift, we are supposed to acknowledge and process what we're feeling, right? However, in many cases, we can't use that information alone to process a situation accurately, right? We can't just use our feelings. We have to take in more than just our feelings as information. Our feelings provide vital information. Thank you so much, Trinae. I appreciate you. Our feelings provide vital information, but they are not the only information we should consider. I'm sure you can think of many scenarios where you relied on your gut and you were right. But it's also important to acknowledge the other times when you felt just as certain, right, and ended up being wrong. Your emotional reactions are not foolproof because they depend on how you interpret the situation, which is, again, your thoughts. Your thoughts are the foundation for your emotions. We have to understand the relationship between these parts of the human experience. So you have think of your thoughts as like the root. If this was a tree, I use a tree as an analogy because it's something easy to remember. Think of your thoughts as the root, the body of the tree, right? The trunk of the tree as your emotions, and then the top of the tree, the branches and all of that, and the greenery as your behaviors. These are separate parts, right, to a tree, but they do impact or influence one another. The same thing is true within us. We have to analyze the quality of the root, right? What were our thoughts at the time that contributed to this emotional state? And then how is that impacting what we're considering doing behaviorally? When we take the time to slow down and really analyze that relationship, we can prevent ourselves from doing something that could really be sabotaging without meaning to, all because we're having an intense emotional experience, right? So, and again, for people who are just coming in, I am going live right now, multiple places. So this is why I'm looking all over the place. I just want y'all to know that there's something here, here, and here. So yeah, anyway. Okay, so I'm going to finish out the last 3 paragraphs for this, and then I'm going to go back and read what else you all were wanting me to kind of cover. Thank you so much for the follow on my new page. Thank you so much. So for people who are here, the one I'm looking at right now, this is my shop TikTok page that I made to be able to continue selling my 5-star rated self-help book. As you can see, I've almost sold 700 copies in TikTok shop alone. But in total, overall, since its release, I've sold about 3,000 copies, and it has 5 stars across all platforms that you can find it, which is really awesome. And it's a book to help you better understand your human experiences, while also not just like understanding, but I teach you in the book what to do when you're having these experiences to manage yourself better, certain emotions, thoughts, behaviors, etc. I am a doctor of psychology and the brain, but I also have taught as a professor. So I use my skills as a teacher to really teach through the book, since, when you're reading something, the person who wrote it isn't physically there with you. So I tried to keep that in mind so that it feels like I'm there with you, breaking things down, because it's not enough for us to just understand something. You want to be able to take things to the next level and really know what to do when it's happening. And I think that's where a lot of times people struggle to like put that into a book, which I understand why, right? Because your students not there in real time. They're, reading and experiencing this thing in a different space, and you're not there to answer questions in real time. So what I did hi Shorty, good to see you. So what I did while writing the book is I tried to think as a reader what questions you might have about what I just explained. And then I also explained that while writing. And the feedback that I've gotten from the people who have read my book, and if you look at the reviews in TikTok shop, you'll be able to see this, that people are saying that it does a really great job of teaching you what to do, not just teaching you what the human phenomenon is, but what to do about it. Also, really quick, before I finish this part off, for people, again, that are new in the space, I want to let you all know, too, that yes, the book has representation for Black people and people of color, but my readers are of all races. You do not have to be Black to benefit from reading this book. And the first page of the book is a special message to my non-Black readers, right? You see that? So this is an invitation to all humans. What you get if you're not a Black person reading this book is, number one, 96% of it focuses on mental health knowledge that applies to all human beings. I'm a scientist of the brain. So if you have a human brain, everything that's in this book related to mental health still applies to you. But the representation pieces are helping more people, more humans, have spaces where they feel seen, and also have spaces where they can challenge some of the harmful things they've been taught. And in case people are not aware, within the Black community, there's still a lot of stigma around mental health. So one of the ways that we fight stigma is by utilizing representation, helping people feel safe enough to challenge the things that they were maybe taught about mental health. And so when you see something that has representation for you, you're more likely to say, hey, maybe what people taught me about this whole mental health thing just being for white people or whatever isn't true. And then you're like more likely to give yourself a chance to learn. So this is just, I also cover cognitive dissonance in the book. So cognitive dissonance is one of the things we're up against when trying to change someone's beliefs. And it can be challenging, but there are things that we can do. And one of those things is to provide representation. So hopefully that makes sense. But if you swipe through the photos in the TikTok shop listing, you'll see reviews from my readers of all races. So you can also just read what they had to say. You don't have to just take my word for it. But the breakdown is 96% of it focuses on mental health skills, knowledge, so like basically the whole book almost. And then because it's a self-help book at the end of the day. And then the other 4% focuses on representation for the Black community. If you're not Black, it'll increase your social awareness and empathy for people who are having different lived experiences than you, which is what we should be doing. So we should care about how other people's lives are going, not just our own, because we all affect each other. The cost of the book is about $20. I have on TikTok shop, I have the option for signed copies. So those are a little more because I actually write a whole message to the reader. But otherwise it comes out to about, depending on where you're purchasing it from, it comes out to about $20 with tax and everything like that. Okay. And if you're looking for it, you can just search by the title. Also, I just realized I need to do this over here too. Give me 1 second, y'all. I have to turn off the mirror view. There you go. That helps, right? Because now you can read it. Because I know the people over here in the other live, I don't have it pinned because I can't from this account. So I'm on another account where I have it pinned, but you can see enough of the title, or you can just search my name. My name is right here. I'm Dr. Abena Berry. If you search that, you'll be able to find it. It is on TikTok shop. And I have to stress to get it on TikTok shop. I have to stress to get it on TikTok shop because I'm on TikTok right now. But to the question that's in the comments, yes. That's all I can say. Yes. You have to be really careful on here, y'all. TikTok does not allow you to say anything but TikTok. So hopefully you understand. Right? Hopefully you understand. So but the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And also, well, no, I can't even say that. I don't even want to play around with TikTok anymore because I just don't even want to. Anyway, if you go to my TikTok page, underneath my profile picture, you'll see something really important. You read the information under my profile picture. That's, again, the best I can do. Anyway, so let's finish reading this part. I don't think people realize like TikTok will like come for you if you say anything but TikTok on here. So anyway, okay. So, where were we? Okay, so I'm going to start this paragraph over. I'm sure you can think of many scenarios where you relied on your gut and you were right, but it's also important to acknowledge the other times when you felt just as certain and ended up being wrong. Your emotional reactions are not foolproof. Because they depend on how you interpret the situation, or again, your thoughts, right? That's the foundation. If your initial assumption is faulty, meaning if something was not the best about the way you were thinking at the time. And again, we got to see this without shame. I can't stress this enough. Not that shame is a bad emotion, and maybe we should talk about that too, because I do cover it in the book. It can be, depending on how we were conditioned to have a relationship with that emotion. But in itself, it is not bad. It serves a purpose like all of our emotions. But we want to approach our inner world with curiosity, because that's how we do the best job of managing it. Right? So if your initial assumption is faulty, your emotional response is then based on faulty judgment. In other words, although they are separate things, your interpretation of what occurred is the foundation upon which your emotions are built, right? You can avoid emotional reasoning. Thank you so much for your purchase. I'm excited to pack it for you and get it to you. And I don't know if you got a signed copy or not, but if you did, I'm really excited to sign a personal message to you as well. In other words, although they are separate things, your interpretation of what occurred is the foundation upon which your emotions are built. You can avoid emotional reasoning by being mindful of the source of your emotional reaction. So this requires us to slow down. It requires us to slow down a little bit. Doing so is vital because how you choose to respond, your behaviors, often depends on how you feel. I bet you've heard people say, this is one of my favorite parts that I wrote in the book, because I literally always laugh a little inside, but also get sad. It's a lot of emotion that comes up when I hear people say this, but okay. So I bet you've heard people say they use rationality to make decisions instead of emotionality, right? We hear that all the time. Oh, I'm thinking rationally. Emotions aren't involved, right? We hear people say that. I've always found this funny because rationality and emotionality naturally work together due to brain anatomy, right? You can't pull them apart fully. Like that's not possible. Our brain is one whole system, right? So, okay, your frontal lobe, this part of our brain, our forehead, but behind it is your frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe, the largest lobe of the brain and considered the emotional and behavioral control center, is responsible for your personality, impulse control, problem solving, emotional responses, behaviors, and much more, right? Not only that, but all four lobes of the brain have parts that serve some type of emotion-related function. Now, welcome in. Thanks for the follow. That serves some kind of emotion-related function. Basically, your brain is one big emotional organ with many other vital functions, of course, right? And this is another way that we've been lied to because of generational trauma. And when I'm trying to help people unlearn this idea that you get to choose to be emotional, you do not. This idea that you get to choose what parts of the brain you're using or not, it's just not how things work. And so our power comes from accepting that and instead being like, okay, if this is what it means to be human, or if this is what comes with being human, I'm going to put my energy into understanding these parts of myself so I can work with them, right? Instead of just winging it, because we see how that's going. It's not going very well, right? It's not people neglecting to learn about their emotions and about their brain and about their behaviors and to self-reflect or to get therapy and all that stuff. It's not going well, right? It's never going to go well for us to do that. So this is why I take the time to teach. I really want people to understand that you are powerful, but in order to really hone and utilize your power, you must understand your inner workings, right? Your mind, your experiences. We have to take the time to learn about those things. This is for everybody. It's not for some of us, it's for all of us. So I see more people have joined. I just want to really quickly again remind everyone that I know you see the title and you might be wondering, do I have to be Black to benefit from this book? No, you do not. The book has representation to help fight stigma in Black communities around mental health. It also has representation because Black communities are underserved when it comes to mental health resources. However, my book is still being read by people of all different backgrounds because mental health applies to all of us. So the easiest way to think about it is there's some examples in the book that are relatable to the Black community, but the knowledge in the book about the human brain applies to everyone. So the parts that are about cultural or things that are relatable to Black communities, even if you're not Black, that's still increasing your social awareness and empathy for other people's experiences, right? So still like relevant to you, just in a different way. I really encourage people to click on the book down here. When it pops up, swipe through the photos. That will answer so many of your questions. And then the first page of the book is a special message to my non-Black readers. This was my way of doing my best to, I'm showing everybody because I have multiple lives going, doing my best to help people understand that the knowledge still applies to you in this book, okay? But like I said, look at some of the reviews. You don't have to take my word for it. You can take the word of my readers, and you can find the readers that share the same racial identity as you, because literally everyone has been reading it of different backgrounds. So if you look through enough reviews, you'll find someone who's white or who's Asian or who's Latina or whatever. So yes, it's still a book for all. I've read this book and I can say it made me feel seen and like I was being shown so much love. Thank you, Savannah, for saying that, right? So like this is an example of the power of representation. Everyone deserves to have representation, and we have not been doing a good job of that in society. But just like how most of the books that I read in school were more considerate and reflective of white lived experiences, but the knowledge still applied to me as a human being. Same is true with this book. We have to be able to tell the difference between like talking about someone's lived experiences versus the human brain, which still applies to all of us, right? So yeah. Okay. And then because, where were we? Let's finish. Because of this, okay, yeah. Not only that, but all four lobes of the brain have parts that serve some type of emotion-related function. Basically, your brain is one big emotional organ, right? With many other vital functions, of course. Because of this, you are always in an emotional state of some kind. You are always in an emotional state of some kind, whether you realize it or not. So emotions play a role even when you are reasoning, even when you're reasoning. As stated earlier, your thoughts influence your feelings, regardless of whether the thoughts are rational or irrational. Of course, you can have an irrational thought that leads to specific emotions, but still decide to engage in a rational behavioral response. So in other words, just to say it in a slightly different way, we can have a thought, right? Recognize that it's irrational. And then because of our ability to shift course, right, like for ourselves, we can then choose to engage in a rational behavioral response. So it's not like we're doomed just because we had a moment or a thought of irrationality. But this is why it's so important to recognize the relationship between these different parts so that we can be intentional to notice that, like, hey, maybe I don't have enough information here to be doing what I was thinking about doing in response to this situation. Maybe I should slow down, gather some more information, and choose a different behavior. Thank you, Auntie Janice, for the share. Thank you so much. Lauren, thank you. Yes, I'm just reading what's over here. I'm so glad. Yeah, I just want more and more people to understand we're still all connected, but our identities matter. So like it's not an insult or taking anything from you for other people to be seen, you know? I remember learning more from the people that were my age. Yeah, none of us raised enough each other sometimes. Yeah, absolutely, Trinae. That's a great point. It's because of generational trauma, and generally speaking, because the further back you go, the more how do I put this? The further back you go historically, the more harmful things we were accepting. Because we're still doing very harmful things today, sadly, but it was like people were even less aware of the impact that it had. So because of that, a lot of boomers or older generation, there was, I mean, such severe trauma that was like normalized, right? Whether we're talking about the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, the psychological abuse, but it was just seen as like, yeah, that's there's no problem here, right? But now we have endless access to like scientific data, brain imaging, knowledge of all kinds that lets us know like, no, it's doing horrible things. So more people are aware of that fact. We still got a lot of work to do to break these habits, because there's almost 9 billion people. When I say that, I'm like, oh my God. And like everybody's in a different place, you know? And then depending on a person's understanding of the importance of like change and healing and education, it's like, it can be, some people, it's just really hard to help them shift the way that they think, because they were conditioned to think that that's like you attacking them, or when really what you're trying to do is help them continue to evolve. Dina, it's so good to see you. It's so good to see you. I have a beautiful emotional growth to share with my son. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Yes, I am back. Right now I'm online. I'm actually on 3 lives right now. Okay, I have some questions over here. I wanted to see. And yes, thank you for checking out the book, whoever that was that just was. Please make sure that you swipe through the photos. It will answer so many of your questions, including you'll be able to see the table of contents, and you'll be able to see reviews from some of my readers. You can also scroll down in the TikTok listing and see, I think there's like 68 reviews on TikTok Shop, and I've sold almost 700 copies here. So there's a lot that you could read through to make a decision. And then let me know if people have questions too. Okay, I see some questions over here. Hi, Paris. Doc, do you agree people project more on attractive people? So I love that question. I really appreciate that question. So the question was, just in case people didn't hear, do I agree that people tend to project more when they perceive someone to be attractive, or people who are stereotypically attractive, right? Whatever. Because we know that symmetry of the face actually impacts our perception of attractiveness. Science has proven that. So the more symmetrical the face, the more attractive a person tends to be perceived. But it's complicated because attraction is not that black and white, right? But what I will say is, I do think you have a higher chance of like, especially if you're maybe coming across people that are dealing with a lot of struggles with their own self-esteem, you have a higher chance of maybe having things projected. But it's complicated because sometimes people will be even kinder to you if they view you as attractive, right? So the big takeaway with human behavior is that it is kind of a complex thing, and there are usually multiple things contributing to it. But I do, Paris, believe that there's truth to that, and science does support that as well. But it's not that black and white. It's not, so straight of like, okay, if you're attractive, you're going to be dealing with people projecting all the time. People deal with people projecting all the time a lot, in general, because we're mirrors for one another. So you can sometimes see something in someone else that triggers you. So it's just like a lot of reasons why projection happens. But okay, let's finish the last 2 paragraphs. So however, this would still be representative of these 3 systems sharing a relationship. In other words, you realize you are at risk of engaging in an irrational behavior based on unreasonable thoughts, which you then feel is not the right way to handle things. So you think of a different response and choose a different behavior. You see how that's all still, emotions are still involved in that. Just because self-awareness and free will help you in these types of situations, it doesn't mean you made a behavioral decision that was completely independent of emotion, because we can't do that, right? Like, that's not how things work. You likely had separate emotions when you realized the original thought was irrational, which led to you changing your mindset and subsequently your behavior. My point is, there's no way to pull them apart completely, meaning emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. You cannot pull them apart completely because they are all part of an interconnected system within your brain. When it comes to your emotional experiences, your job is to analyze the thoughts that are the source of those feelings. experience, right? When it comes to your emotional experiences, your job is to analyze the thoughts that are the source of those feelings. This is how you determine the best way to respond to the situation and how to best meet your emotional needs. So hopefully that helps. With this is just about emotional reasoning to avoid that, because we do not want to emotionally reason if we can help it. And also, people, thank y'all so much for your purchase. I am so excited, Gina, to also pack your order. If you did a signed copy, I look forward to writing your personal message and also signing it. Signed copies include a personal message from me, so it's not just me signing my name. It's like me actually writing you a message. And what else was I going to say? Sorry, y'all. This is also the first time I have gone live at one time on 3 separate devices. So I'm like doing my best. My brain is all over the place. What I was going to say is, for people who are over here on my Shop Dr. Abena Berry page, I do have my main primary page too, which is at Dr. Abena Berry on TikTok. If you, maybe I can, before I like end up hopping off, I'll probably stop the other live and then come over here so you all can easily find me. That other page is my main page for sharing content, right? So if you want to see videos on mental health and all that stuff, that you would want to be on that other page as well. This is my shop page for selling my book. Okay. And all right, so there was some, let me scroll back because there was other topics you all wanted me to go over. I remember, Jessica, you said you just want help with coping in general. So that's like, it covers everything in the book, but I'll see if something, I can read a little excerpt for you in relationship to that. What's the difference between being accountable and just acknowledging there's a problem? I love that, Savannah. Yes. And that's covered in the book. So we can also talk about it from the book. Let me pin that comment. There we go. Oh, why won't it let me? It won't let me pin it. Weird. Whatever. The comment says, what's the difference between being accountable and just acknowledging that there's a problem? So we're going to talk about accountability. I cover it in the book, so we'll go to that part. And then after that, I will read something else related to coping too. Yes. Rosie, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yep. Just look at the title and you'll be able to find it. It's also on TikTok Shop. I have to keep saying that, y'all, because TikTok will only let you say TikTok Shop. But yes to everything else. Whatever y'all about to ask, yes. I'm telling you, the answer is yes. Just, sir, my name is Dr. Abena Berry, right? You can see the book, right? So you'll be able to find it. You can also go to my TikTok page if you want to make your life easy to find everything you're looking for right under my profile picture. And it'll take you somewhere, right? Okay. So hopefully you all understand what I mean. Okay. Let's do accountability, because that's such a big deal. And that one is a struggle for a lot of people. And you want to know why? I know it's going to be like, oh, is this the answer to everything? And the answer is kind of like, yeah, it is. Like, trauma is a big problem, but specifically the trauma around, I don't know what's going on in the comments. Sorry. I haven't done this in a while. There we go. Specifically around, the reason why people are so resistant to taking accountability is because it was not safe to make mistakes in their home. We have to remember that human beings we're still animals, like we're mammals, right? And so we have built-in survival systems, just like any animal does, right? We've all heard of fight, flight, freeze. We all have heard of like how people will respond in danger. And so people will mistakenly think that when you do trauma to someone, there's not these long-term effects from that, but that there is. And if somebody's being physically, emotionally, psychologically, financially abused, any of those things, it doesn't matter what kind of abuse, like there is going to be an impact. And one of those ways that we've seen this affect people is struggles with accountability, struggles with communication. Okay, so let me see what part. So in chapter 6, guess what chapter this is? It is trauma responses. Surprise, surprise, right? No, it's not a surprise, right? Trauma responses. I'm showing everybody. And that's where you will find the subsection about accountability. So I'm going to go to that part because I break it down in that section. And I also I think it's so important that we help people understand how they've gotten to where they're at and how they respond to certain things, because sometimes the people have a hard time with the idea, like they take it as like they're a bad person, like this wanting to avoid this idea that you're a bad person is stopping so many people from growing. So when you can help them understand the ways that they were failed in their upbringing or with certain experiences and not taught things that would have helped them manage this better, I think it frees them of some of that toxic shame, which will allow them to be open to like growing and changing. So yeah, but we're going to read this subsection called taking accountability. Okay. And again, this is in chapter 6 of my book, which is called Trauma Responses. So this chapter is all about trauma, and specifically healing from the trauma responses. This section is a little longer, so we'll see if we read the whole thing or not. I can if you all want me to. So I'll ask as I go. The reason why is because I really break this down, like, because there's so much healing related to accountability. So let's get into it. So taking accountability. Our trauma responses are not always as innocent as a change. Well, I'm referring to something earlier in the chapter, so this is not going to make sense, right, what I'm about to say, but it would if you were reading the whole chapter. Anyway, our trauma responses are not always as innocent as a change in color preference. Certain traumatic experiences cause us to develop responses that, when unchecked, cause other people trauma. For instance, being in an abusive relationship can lead the abused person to engage in similar behaviors, right? We know this for a fact. Think about it. If someone suffers verbal abuse, they may begin to do the same to protect themselves, because as humans, when we're in an environment for a long time, whether we're meaning to consciously or not, we do start to pick up the things that are happening around us, right? This is why also having boundaries and being selective about relationships is so imperative. So think about it this way. If you have a friend, let's say you had a friend that says the word dude a lot, and when they're talking, you may find that you start saying dude, even though that wasn't something you said before. And this is a prime example of how we're always being conditioned, right? And the people we spend the most time around, the environments that we're in, it has an impact on us. It has an impact on our brain. And sure, we can be consciously aware. You could notice that you're saying dude and be like, oh, I don't, maybe for some reason you don't want to say it. So you are consciously mindful to try not to say it, but still nonetheless, the easier route is to just be intentional about the company you keep, right? And to remove yourself from situations if it's, an unhealthy one. But obviously saying dude is fine. That's not a problem. Just using that as an example. Okay. Suppose someone grows up witnessing the people around them engaging in abusive behavior. This can subconsciously normalize this behavior, making that person more susceptible to doing the same or ending up in a relationship where they are similarly abused. This is because our closest relationships are our growth environments. Who we choose to surround ourselves with can have a major impact on how much and in what ways we grow or not, right? Of course, your growth is still your responsibility, but we also can't fail to acknowledge how our environment can be either a help or a hindrance, right? Just like a flower, right? Oh, that's how you know I wrote this. That's so funny. Sometimes I like quote myself on what I just was about to say. The next line is literally, just like a flower, just like a flower, we can only bloom under the right conditions. Staying in certain relationships or environments will cause us to wither until we change environments and heal. Psychological research has confirmed this many times over. Do I want to skip this little part? No, we'll read this part too. A research article from the National Institute of Justice, Children Exposed to Violence, states, exposure to violence can harm a child's emotional, psychological, and even physical development. Children exposed to violence are more likely to have difficulty in school, abuse drugs and alcohol, act aggressively, suffer from depression or other mental health problems, and engage in criminal behavior as adults. The adverse effects and outcomes of abuse and violence are well known and have been repeatedly validated through research. If if you've experienced this or any related trauma, you will need to do some self-work. You can't have healthy relationships without first working to heal trauma responses that would harm your relationships. I learned this lesson the hard way. Before, we'll just read. Because I start this part with a personal example. So we'll read that and then we'll continue. Because it does get specifically into the accountability after this. But okay, so we'll just keep reading. You can't have healthy relationships without first working to heal trauma responses that would harm your relationships. I learned this lesson the hard way. Before meeting my husband, I was in an abusive romantic relationship for 3 years. Without realizing it, I picked up some emotional and psychological abusive behaviors from spending those years with that person. These were harmful trauma responses that would have affected my relationships going forward if they weren't unlearned. Right. And that was a part of my journey, that I had to intentionally take ownership and accountability for what I was doing. Right. I could understand how I became that way. Right. I knew my history. But if I don't take accountability in the present, then there's not going to be motivation for change. Right. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. Okay. And where were we? Okay. When I first began dating my husband, these toxic communication patterns, right, because it was for me, it came up with how I communicated. These toxic communication patterns showed up in our relationship. When we first met, my brain was still responding, right? My brain was still responding to the relationship environment I had come from. And I had to learn how to respond to my new relationship. I had to consciously help my brain accept that I no longer needed those trauma responses because I was no longer in an abusive relationship, right? It's a very conscious, intentional thing. I learned by being aware of my choices, processing and analyzing my trauma to understand how the previous relationship affected me, and consistently correcting my behaviors and thoughts so I could break the patterns. I also at that time was in therapy, right? So thankfully, my husband was patient and understanding, and I was intentional about unlearning and healing. I chose to take accountability, and with practice, I improved my communication significantly and abandoned those harmful behaviors. I also believed in my ability to change, which was especially important. Otherwise, I would have been at risk of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I cover what self-fulfilling prophecies are in the chapter after this. Chapter 7 is actually called self-fulfilling prophecies. So if you don't know what those are, please know that they affect you all the time. They're happening to you, even if you don't know what they are. They are a product of us not having enough awareness about the relationship between, the easiest way to describe it is the relationship between our beliefs and our behaviors, right? And how if we have a strong belief and we're not mindful that it could not be accurate, that will impact our behaviors. So we want positive self-fulfilling prophecies. We don't want negative ones. So now my husband and I have a very healthy communication style because of the intentional work I did to correct and heal at the beginning of our relationship. And also, of course, because of all the self-work we both have done on ourselves in various ways, right? Because we're supposed to continue to evolve in this lifetime. I stated in the introduction that we are not responsible for our trauma, but we are responsible for our healing. Part of taking responsibility is looking with humility and honesty at thoughts and behaviors we need to change. It's tempting to be defensive about it, right? It's tempting to be defensive about it because we don't like how it feels, right? When someone points out something we've done that maybe is not something we're proud of, but we don't want to be defensive because then we can't grow, right? It's tempting to be defensive, but if we choose that approach, our relationships and overall quality of life will suffer as a consequence, right? So it's a big cost to pay. A significant part of healing is taking accountability for our behaviors, even the ones we aren't proud of, right? Our behaviors are choices, which means they are in our control. When we make excuses for not changing harmful behaviors, we create a mental barrier that prevents change. Change requires no longer self-defining by our past behaviors. When we continue to self-define that way, we accidentally condition ourselves to continue the behavior, right? We don't even realize the cost of doing that, but the cost is very high. It keeps you stuck in the cycle. Behavioral change takes a lot of hard work and mental preparation, right? So how we talk to ourselves is imperative. And then for this next part, I give an example of 2 ways that someone could talk to themselves after a certain experience about wanting to change certain behavioral patterns, right? So the first statement, right, is person number 1 says, I've always had a bad attitude. Let's say somebody points out that, like, hey, why are you speaking that way, right? Because it's one thing to be angry, but it's another thing how you express yourself. So imagine that you just popped off on somebody, right? You went too far. What you're saying is not healthy communication, right? So you're expressing your anger in a way that's very, very dysregulated and unproductive, right? So let's imagine though your reaction when they say to you, like, hey, why are you speaking to me that way? Let's say you go, I've always had a bad attitude. I was raised not to take no BS from anyone. If someone tries me, I won't hesitate to curse them out, right? I'm sure we've heard people say things like that, right? So that's person number 1. But now let's imagine we're person number 2. Here's another way that you could respond. I give respect, so I don't tolerate disrespect. I'm working on communicating my anger in an effective, healthy way. I still have a ways to go, but I'm taking every opportunity to grow, practice this skill, and improve. Which of these 2 people sounds like they will make progress towards change? Of course, the answer is person number 2. You can't expect to change if you refuse to take self-accountability or commit to change, right? The first statement does not commit to any kind of change. You're like, this is just who I am, take it or leave it. And it's like, well, that's a choice. That's a choice for this to continue to be who you are, because communication is a skill, right? That's like the equivalent of me saying, I don't speak German, and that's just who I am. And it's like, yeah, but you could also learn German if you wanted to. Now you don't have to, but you could. It's not like you have to, not know German forever. You could learn that language if you desired to. This is the same thing. Communication is a skill. So when we treat it as if it's like this fixed part of our personality, we fail to nurture the skill. Right? You got to remember, you came into the world with only one language that you knew how to speak, which was crying. Crying is a language, is how well it acts like a language, right? It's also a biological ability that we have. But when we come into the world, that's how we communicate. You cry in different ways. Like, it's been proven that we cry in different ways based on the needs we have. So it acts like a language. But later, you learned one of, if not more, of the many verbal languages that humans have created. Because we got to remember, language is a social construct. These are just sounds that we've given meaning to. But because we gave meaning to them, you all can understand what I'm saying right now, right? So if I did not know English when I came into the world and I had to learn it, then wouldn't it mean that I can learn how to use this thing that I had to learn in the first place better? Doesn't it mean that I could get better at how I use language if I didn't even know it at one point? Right? Of course it does. So we have to remember these things are about skills. So it's just a reflection of where we're at in our skill set. It doesn't have to be a fixed version of ourselves, but depending on how we respond to ourselves, we could be conditioning ourselves to stay the same. And that's doing ourselves a disservice. But here's the bigger picture too. Odds are you learned to respond that way from someone in your life who did not take accountability. And so this is why I want us to approach this with, healthy, like a healthy curiosity, healthy amounts of maybe shame and guilt, because those emotions are not bad. I cover them in the book and what their purpose is. We feel shame and we feel guilt because it's our brain's way of alerting to us that there is something that we desire to change. But if our response to those emotions are to shut down, to be defensive, we are failing to do what our brain is causing us to do. Emotional intelligence teaches us what these emotions are saying to us, what they're telling us about where we're at, what we desire, what we want to do differently. Every emotion is a note from your brain. But if nobody ever taught you how to speak the language, you just get the note and you're like, what is this? Why am I anxious? And then you don't know what to do with it. So like that's why it's so important that we realize that we like in general, as a whole, I would argue that humans have been really failed, right? When it comes to being taught about these things, we've been taught lies that you don't need to know about your brain or the stigma around it. And it's like, But this is literally you. Your brain is you. What do you mean you don't need to understand the inner workings of it? What do you mean that you don't need to understand what your emotions are communicating? What do you mean that you don't need to be aware of your behaviors or yourself? Like, look, this is what happens when humans have been brainwashed into believing that they don't have to manage themselves. Look at the world around you. That's how we have gotten here. Your brain is literally you, and the quality of your relationship with it determines how well you are to yourself and others. So if we want a better world, we have to take mental health seriously. Mental health is your brain. That is all it is. It's about your relationship with the organ that is literally you, that houses consciousness for you in the connection of the universe. Like that. So it's like, it doesn't get any more important than that. But anyway, okay, so let's keep reading. Okay, so we just went over person number 1 and person number 2, right? And we know that person number 2, the one that's taking accountability about the skills that they need to keep learning, is going to do the most growth, right? So, okay. So where were we? In contrast, speaking like person number 1 primes you to justify and continue the behavior. In contrast, talking to yourself like person number 2 keeps you self-aware and accountable. The change will take time and happen gradually, but you will only progress by taking ownership of your desire for change, right? We have to say, hey, I do want to be better in this way. I see that this behavior is negatively impacting my life, and I want something different for myself. But we have to recognize that part of why we don't feel capable of that is because of what trauma has done to us. Because you came into the world feeling it's so capable that people had to like literally chase you around to keep you safe. Because you just thought you could do whatever. You thought you were an invincible person, right? That's how, when you think about children, that's how we move. And we have to remember that we were once a child, and we had an unbreakable amount of belief in ourselves. We thought we were capable of whatever. We fell, we got back up. We were like, oh, what's this? What's that? What's that? I can cook this. I can do this. I can whatever. We were trying to do things before we even understood the basics of what was going on. And people were supposed to hone and nurture that drive in us, that belief in ourselves, but they were also supposed to teach us the importance of slowing down and like learning what we need to learn before we act and all of that, right? But trauma fails to teach anybody anything. So that's why we have so many adults who are struggling to manage their human experiences. Okay, so of course you will still be tempted to engage in the old behavior because you have become accustomed to it. However, you're more likely to catch yourself when you maintain a high level of self-awareness, like person number 2. The more you talk to yourself and self-reflect, the more self-aware you become. If you are dismissive about changing, you will become less self-aware because you aren't invested. And as a result, you won't change. Mental preparation and commitment are the foundation for change. You cannot change overnight, but you can start progressing by tomorrow. Change comes with noticeable progress that is relatively consistent despite old patterns occasionally occurring. This is another really important point, right? Change is not perfection, because perfection does not exist. And sometimes people are holding themselves to standards of perfection. And so they're failing to internalize the ways that they have grown. And this is especially true when they're still around people in their life that are very stuck in cycles. I can't tell you how often I've had clients who have really put in a lot of hard work in therapy or in coaching, because I also do life coaching to help people reach certain goals, right? I can't tell you how many times I've had clients that are around, that are, environments still where maybe some of the people around them are struggling with learned helplessness. And I have deep empathy because I know that trauma creates that, right? But those people are also sending messages that can negatively impact that person's pattern of accepting how much work they have done on themselves, right? So like a prime example of this is that comes to mind that's very common is, let's say I had a client that was struggling with anger management, right? And they used to maybe in the past, blow up, curse people out, hit people, whatever it is, right? But now fast forward to the work that they've done on themselves, they have grown in their communication skills. They are able to assert themselves without causing harm. They're able to hold people accountable in a way they can be proud of, right? They have grown in that ability to regulate themselves. And let's say they come across someone in their life who used to be or still is a trigger for anger for them, right? And let's say they're having a conversation with the person, they initially show up and they're communicating well, they're doing all the things that they've worked on within themselves. But that person just keeps poking and poking and poking and poking and poking and poking. And then eventually the person yells, right? Like they yell, and then they're like, you know what? I don't even want to, and then they remove themselves from the situation. And that person that they were talking to is gonna be like, see, you didn't change, you still get mad, you still blah, blah. And it's like they're causing you to ignore all that you are doing differently, right? Bye, Savannah. Thanks for being here. They're trying to get you to ignore all that you have done differently, all because you eventually got to a breaking point and maybe yelled, as if that erases all the other things that you did. But that's really them projecting, because they're still doing all the same behavior. They have not grown or changed at all. And they maybe managed to provoke you to the point where you engaged in the old behavior. But that doesn't mean that you have not changed. And a lot of times that's what I mean by holding yourself to a standard of perfection. But the problem with that is perfection does not exist. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect, but you have to see your progress and your change for what it is. Otherwise you end up, kind of believing that message, and that can really mess with your self-work journey, right? We all still have like a breaking point, even when we've gotten better at regulating. But this is why we also need to know when to walk away and stop engaging too, right? Because we still have breaking points. Okay. Let's see. Practice how you want to be so you can become who you desire to become. Self-growth results from choosing to shift your mindset, practicing new ways of responding to your emotions, and engaging in new behaviors. Whatever you want to improve about yourself is simply a skill, right? No different than if you wanted to learn how to play piano or how to bake. Before you know it, that skill will become an embodied trait that is now part of who you are. We develop new skills and make positive progress by committing to change, having patience with ourselves, learning from each attempt or mistake, and holding ourselves, sorry, it's making me do the little puzzle thing. Okay, there we go. And holding ourselves accountable to consistently practicing. Right? So again, this is why healing our understanding of what change actually is so important, because the reality is that change comes from us managing ourselves better. So you're basically having the same experiences, but you have improved your response by increasing your skill set. That's what real change is, right? You still feel anger, you just now know how to manage it. You still feel anxiety sometimes, you just now know how to manage it better, right? So you're improving skill set. And sometimes people mistakenly think that change requires you to have an absence of these human experiences. You cannot have an absence of anger or any emotion, because they are built into how your brain functions. And plus, they serve a purpose. So you're not trying to get rid of your emotions. One, that's impossible. You would literally have to take out multiple parts of your brain, and then your brain cannot function anymore. So that's not an option, right? So it's not that, right? It's about learning how to be well acquainted with the inner workings of your mind and to work with it. Yes, Jessica, because people have been taught to see their emotions as like a burden, or like this thing to reject, when it's a part of you and it actually serves an important purpose, but people were supposed to teach you how to manage it. And that's why I do what I can to help people learn what they can do to better manage their inner world, because I'm so grateful for the people who have taught me how to better manage my inner world, because there is no cure to being a human being. I cannot cure your humanity. It does not need to be cured. You cannot be less human, but you also can't be the best version of yourself by denying your humanity, pretending like you don't have emotions, pretending like you don't need to be aware of your behaviors, pretending like you don't need to work on increasing skill set. Like, that's not going to make you a better version of you. And then what a disservice that is, not only to yourself, because you deserve to be evolving throughout your lifetime, but it's also a disservice to all of us in humanity, because we need you. We need you to be growing into the better version of yourself. We are all in this together. So like it's all you got to do to change the world is work on yourself. Like that is, and it will help so many people along the way in ways that you could not even imagine. People that you never even know that you touched or helped, because you're modeling, the possibilities of growth and change, and you're positively impacting other people's lives. And we're all here in this together anyway. So we're supposed to be doing that. She's always telling me I need something for my anxiety, and I've learned to control it better. That's amazing, Jessica. Yeah, because anxiety is something that we can learn to manage. Everyone's journey is different. So I don't want to, like some people will take medication for a long period of time. There's nothing wrong with that. We just want to make sure we remember that medication is a supplement. Never give up your power. There is no pill that's going to, again, cure you of your humanity. You still need to be learning how to work with your anxiety. And for those of you who have been rocking with me for a long time, you know that I used to have an anxiety disorder. I talk about it in my book. I talk about things that I did to unlearn that relationship with my anxiety. Do I still experience anxiety? Yes, of course I do. What's changed is my understanding of it. I have higher emotional intelligence, so I know what it is, why it exists, what it's communicating to me. Also, my skill set to manage it has improved. I'm more mindful of my thoughts in relationship to it. I can regulate myself through my self-talk and things like that. I also know when I need to co-regulate and seek other people, because we also need other people still. It's not something we do by ourselves, especially if you're having big emotion. But yeah, so that's what's changed. My ability to manage it has changed. And anxiety is a big one that I cover in the book, because a lot of people, struggle with it. It's a big emotion. It doesn't feel good, like in your body. I experienced anxiety before getting on here, right? Because today is the first time that I decided to stream from multiple places, right? I've never had, that's why I keep looking everywhere for people who are just coming in, right? So I'm on 3 different things right now, right? 3 different devices. And for people who are checking out the book, hi, Robin. As you check out the book, please make sure you swipe through the photos. Please, please, please. It's going to answer so many questions so that I don't have to repeat the same things for people who've already heard it. But please swipe through the photos. It will help you form an opinion on whether or not you would like to get the book. But the book is still for all. That's what you need to know. But anyway, before I got on here, thank you for checking it out. Before I got on here, I felt anxiety. And let's say it was 19, 20-year-old me. That's when my anxiety disorder was like, it was so intense. I was having panic attacks like weekly, sometimes multiple times a week. It was debilitating. It was hard to function. So that was around when I was like 19, 20, 21 years old, right? That's also when I first went to therapy. Anyway, imagine if that was still where I was. When I felt the anxiety of today, I wouldn't have understood why I was feeling anxious. I would have probably shut down and wouldn't have got on here. But what's different now is, even though I still experience that emotion, I understood, like, yeah, it's normal to feel anxious, because I now know that anxiety happens when it's rational thinking. So we're talking about rational thinking. Anxiety happens if we're having a rational thought, because our brain is telling us that there's something we need to do or something that we need to say or prepare for. So it's to bring our attention to the present moment, right? It's also to prepare us for whatever it is what we wanted to do. I had decided yesterday, because I had a gap in my schedule between my therapy clients today, that I was going to come on live at 3. And so I felt the anxiety once it was approaching 3, because I'm like, oh yeah, I got to get the stuff set up. I didn't have the time I hoped I was going to have to figure out how to do this, but I still figured it out, because I'm in all the places I wanted to be, right? But like, I understood that it was there because I was doing something that was important to me. Like, this was something I wanted to do today. And so my attention was brought to the present moment through the anxiety, and I responded to it through action. And you know what happens when we actually answer the call to action? When we listen to what our brain is telling us and calling us to do from that anxiety, the anxiety dissipates. That's why I'm not feeling anxious now, right? Because I listen to the call to action. But we also have to regulate the anxiety. It's because if we experience it and we don't like respond to it, and it just sits there and it festers, it becomes bigger, because your brain's like, why aren't you listening? Why aren't you doing the things you said you were going to do, right? And then you start feeling so panicky that you can shut down. So I immediately was like, yeah, I know, brain, thank you for the reminder. I know it's almost 3:00. I'm still going to do what I said I was going to do, right? And it's okay if I changed my mind too, right? But I decided, like, nope, I want to do this today. And I was like, and I'm going to do it confused. And that's okay. I can do it confused. I was like, I have 3 devices. We'll figure it out, right? I was like, it's okay that I'm confused. When I told myself that it was okay that I was a little confused about what I was going to do when I got on here, that already helped me regulate. It was like, I can be confused. I can let y'all know I feel anxious. I can let y'all know that, like, hey, I don't know how this is going to work. And y'all heard me say that today, right? I'm like, I'm looking 3 places. Hope that's not, bothering you too much, but I'm showing up for me and I'm showing up for y'all because I wanted to do this today. Right. And so I released this idea of having to be perfect or having everything figured out. No, I don't have to have any of that. I can just come on here and do my best. And it's still going to be helpful in one way or another for people, because that's my intention. And I'm providing really, helpful knowledge about the human brain. So that's how I regulated and moved through. But 19, 20, 21-year-old me didn't know any of this. It didn't know that anxiety is supposed to be present when we're doing new or important things. It didn't know that anxiety is a call to action. So you have to take steps to respond to it and do what it's calling you to do. This is why you feel anxious before an interview. Your brain is saying, perk up, buttercup. We have something important coming up and we need to prepare for it. So have you looked at the website of the place? Have you practiced your, questions or whatever? Like it's not there to punish, it's there to serve you. But we also have to understand how to manage it, right? Because it is uncomfortable. Like I still don't like how anxiety feels in my body when I experience it. Like it's, no offense to it. I respect it for what it is, but like, it's still not going to ever be my favorite emotion. Like it's just not. I don't think it's anybody's favorite emotion, but I respect its role and its purpose. And I've learned to work with it, and I keep practicing so that I can keep getting better. Do the best you can where you are at the time. Yes, exactly. User 649. Exactly. Right. You just want to do the best you can where you're at the time. And when you release this idea of perfection, it really helps. Right. Nobody is expecting you to show up perfectly. And if they are, that's irrational. What do you mean? You want me to show up as something that's impossible? Okay. You should really explore that within yourself, because I can't do that. Nobody can do that. So it helps when you free yourself of that. Okay, let's read a little more of this part with the taking accountability. I think what I'm going to do, because I broke it into 3 steps. If I read the entirety of all 3 steps, it would take a while. And I probably want to read one more part of the book before I have to hop off, because I do have a 5:00 therapy client. So I want to probably read one more thing for you all, a different topic, but I do want to at least read the steps, right? Because it's like, what does it look like to break this habit within ourselves? And this is what I mean by in my book, I don't just explain things to you. I literally teach you what to do, like to manage these things better, because it's not enough I feel like a lot of self-help books that I've personally read, they do a great job of explaining things to you, but they don't do a great job of teaching you what to do. And so you're left feeling like inspired, like you're like, oh, wow, I've had all these, realizations, but you don't then know what to do with it. And I don't want you to just have realizations. I want you to feel like you know what steps you need to take to confidently start implementing that knowledge into your life. Because y'all know how I often say that knowledge without application is wasted wisdom. Right? Having knowledge, but not knowing how to apply it is wasted wisdom. I want you to have knowledge, know how to apply it, and change yourself and your life and all that. Thanks for the follow. Welcome in. Like I said, too, before I hop off, I'm going to come into this chat over here with more of the peeps. So you can also follow my other TikTok page, which is where I do content, because this one here is just for my shop. But I have another TikTok page with about almost 50,000 followers, and that's where I do my content. But please follow over here too, because I'll be going live here for when you want to catch my lives for book readings and things like that. Okay. So I'm going to read just the steps, but I'm not going to probably read everything because it just will take too long. So the first step, these are the steps to lasting change. The first step to lasting change is to stop self-identifying with the trait you want to improve, because your self-talk significantly impacts your beliefs and behaviors. It's so hard to only read that and not explain more. Okay, I'm going to read more, because I want you to understand what that means as deeply as possible. Okay, so in other words, the more you tell yourself something about yourself, the more it becomes an identity, right? Instead of a growth area, which is something you want to improve. So for example, if you frequently make statements like, I am an anxious person, right? If you are often saying, I'm an anxious person, or I'm always quick to anger, you will unintentionally encourage yourself to stay that way. Your thoughts are indeed that powerful. How you speak to yourself is like giving your brain an order. So when you command it to stay the same by continuously self-defining by traits you want to improve, making progress becomes challenging. right? So again, the one sentence that I read for y'all, this is the kind of the takeaway of this one, which is, in other words, the more you tell yourself something about yourself, the more it becomes an identity instead of a growth area. So we don't want to say things like, I am I am an anxious person. Instead, you want to say, I have the example of what you want to say instead, which is, I sometimes struggle with anxiety and I'm working on managing it better. Do not take your current skill set on as an identity. Do not talk to yourself about it like an identity. That is conditioning your brain to stay the same. And it's hindering you from noticing avenues for growth. So instead of saying, I'm an anxious person, right? Or I'm always quick to anger, we want to say, I sometimes struggle with anxiety and I'm working on managing it better. It keeps you aware that this is a skill. Man, having anxiety or emotion is not a choice, like we've talked about, right? They are parts of how the human brain works. You cannot choose to not have them. You can learn how to manage them better, though. And that's what we want to do. We're trying to improve our skill set. I can't tell you how often my clients end up, and also y'all, just so you know, for people, I saw somebody say hi from Chicago. Hey, hi Jenny. Yeah, I'm actually in Chicagoland. And I was about to say, if anybody is currently looking to start therapy, it's rare, but right now I do actually have an opening for therapy, but you have to be in Illinois. Because I currently am only paying the state of Illinois for licensing. So the way it works is doctors have to pay states in order to be licensed, in order to basically see people who live in that state. It is, in my opinion, a scam. It's a way for states to make money off of healthcare professionals, but it's the rules that humans have made so far. So it does limit me when it comes to therapy, who I can see. But if you live in Illinois and you're looking for a new therapist and you want to see if we could be a good match for each other, you can absolutely reach out to me in my DMs for that, because I do have an opening for therapy. I also have openings for life coaching. And the great news for life coaching is that it does not matter where you live. So Jessica, I see you said, damn, I'm in NY. So I can't be your therapist, but I can be your life coach. So for life coaching, it does not matter where you live, right? It's only for therapy that it matters. But I also do coaching. Life coaching is different in the sense that for life coaching, we are focused on helping you reach whatever goals you have for your life right now based on where you're currently at. I'm still going to help you with any mental blockers, emotional blockers, still provide you with endless amounts of emotional intelligence teaching and training, all of that, because you have to understand how to manage this in order for you to reach your goals anyway. But some examples of things I've helped people with life coaching is changing careers, becoming a published author, because I'm a published author, becoming a psychologist or therapist. People come to me for that one a lot. They want to get help with how to choose programs or how to balance their school load or what to do with dissertation or help with writing, whatever. Like coaching is for anything goal related. I also help with any other careers or things like that too, to help you just with whatever it is you want to accomplish. Maybe you want to become an entrepreneur. Maybe you want to learn a new skill. I also do coaching for emotional regulation and emotional intelligence teaching too. So those things do of course come up in therapy, but the difference is therapy will also focus more on the past, right? Exploring the past, doing trauma processing, diagnosis, things like that. So therapy deals with past, present, and a bit of future, whereas life coaching is more about present and future, right? Helping you understand where you're at right now to get to where you want to be. So hopefully that makes sense. But if people have any questions, you can also send me DMs. But for my Illinois folks, if you're in Illinois and you're looking for a new therapist, hit me up. I'd be happy to see if we're a good match and if I can help you with what you're needing. Okay. So now we're going to skip to the second step. I have more that I wrote about that part, but we get the gist of it, right? We do not want to identify with our growth areas as if they are our fixed personality. We want to acknowledge them based on where we're at in the skill, right? And that makes a world of difference. It sets us up for stuff. Hey, Dre, good to see you. Okay, so the second step to creating lasting change is to ensure your expectations are realistic, right? And practice self-compassion. Oh yes, can you DM that to me pretty please? Because I'm not going to be able to I don't know how to access it after I get off. Actually, you know what? I have my computer right here. I'll write it down. You can also, well, no, I won't even say. I'm always so scared to say anything on here that doesn't include TikTok because TikTok's so picky. So I'll just write I'll just write it down. PA. That says Jamie, right? I think so. That's what I'm seeing. Please confirm for me that that's saying that and not ends. I'm trying to make sure it's okay. Thank you. 683 at Gmail. I got you. I will email you today. It will come from my email, which is healing@drabenaberry.com, because I can't say that word on here. That's also the end of that email is also my site for people who want to learn more. Oh, you can also learn more about coaching on there as well, therapy, all that stuff, all the services. I'm going to be starting a Patreon and stuff too. So that'll be another way to kind of learn from me, because I love doing one-on-ones, but I'm also only one person. So I can only have so many therapy clients or coaching clients at a time. The cool thing about coaching, though, is that my clients usually book as needed. So unlike therapy, where we usually meet weekly or, every other week or whatever, for coaching, it's usually we plan sessions based on need. So if there's something that you're working on that's immediate, we might meet more frequently. If it's something that's more of a long-term goal, we might go, we might meet and then meet again in 2 months or whatever. So the frequency is in the person's control. Charlene, oh, good to see you. Hi. Yes, I am back. It's so good to see you. Welcome in. I tell people all the time, it's because you are now. Doesn't mean you always will be. Yes, exactly, Trinae. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so the second step to creating lasting change is to ensure your expectations are realistic and practice self-compassion. Change happens gradually, not perfectly, right? Because perfection is not real, y'all. So we got to let go of that. And mistakes are a normal part of the process. Difficult moments should be seen as a learning opportunity so you can apply what you learned when the next opportunity comes. This happens by self-reflecting on what occurred and why it occurred. What were you feeling and thinking at the time? What triggered that particular response? What could you do differently? What could you do differently in the future that would meet your needs and also align with your growth goals? In hindsight, is there something you can do now that would align with who you are becoming, such as putting your pride aside and taking accountability and sincerely apologizing? I'm going to read this part too because it's so important, right? It's going to help heal the trauma response in our mind about how we view change, hopefully a little more. Okay, so think back to when you were a child learning to walk for the first time. If you hadn't accepted falling as part of the learning process, you wouldn't have learned to walk, or at least not as quickly as you did. And it wouldn't have been because you weren't capable of learning, but simply because you believed you couldn't just because you fell. Having such a belief would have been enough to stop you from trying to improve your skills, right? Imagine if when you were first learning to walk, but this would never happen, right? Because children, like when we're that young, again, we have such a strong belief in ourselves and people are supposed to nurture that. But trauma can cause us to forget. But anyway, when you were learning to walk, right, you fell. That's how you learned, by continuously getting up and experimenting with your posture, your footing, taking steps. That's literally how you learn, through the practice. The same is true of like our communication skills. The same is true with our emotional regulation, emotional intelligence. But the reason why so many of us have a fixed mindset about who we are is because, unfortunately, people grew up in environments where people were not actively working on evolving. So when you were an innocent little kid, not knowing any better, and you were around these people, you just watched them stay the same. You saw them say things that suggested that that's just how things had to be. And that conditioned you to think that that was true for you too. When in reality, it wasn't true for them or you, right? But this is what trauma does. This is what it's literally like a plague in the mind, right? It convinces you of things. Like think about it this way. Trauma has convinced people that learning is bad. Like, just sit with it. Something that you came into the world desperate to do. You wanted to learn so bad when you came into the world that you were up in everybody's business, trying to listen to every conversation, look at everything, touch everything. And trauma has convinced people that learning, The literal thing that the avenue to growth is bad. Trauma has convinced people that admitting your mistakes is bad. But that's how you grow and evolve. Like, what do you mean? So it keeps you stagnant and the same, and it creates suffering. So we have to wake up from that. But yeah, and for people who are just checking out the book, again, make sure you please swipe through the photos. You have to swipe through the photos so you can see the table of contents, see the reviews from my diverse readers. And again, because I haven't said it in a while, yes, the book has representation for the Black community, but my readers are of all races. They're white, Black, and everything in between, because mental health knowledge applies to everyone. And 96% of this book focuses on mental health knowledge that applies to all humans. And the other 4% has representation for the Black community that even if you aren't Black, is still going to increase your social awareness and empathy for other people. So 100% of this book still is relevant to every human, regardless of their identity. And if you look through the reviews, you'll be able to see other people who hold the racial identity that you have in their reviews, because I have readers of all races. So you can, if you look through enough of the reviews, you'll see somebody who's like, I'm white and or I'm this, because some of my readers did choose to put that. And I really appreciate that they did, because they want other people to understand that, hey, it's still for you too. Also, the first page of the book is a special message to my non-Black readers. Happy to read that before I hop off. It's just one page. If people are curious what it says, because I have not read it today. So in case people want to know what it says. Okay, but let's read the last step for lasting change before, and again, I'm skipping like the rest of the explanation just for the sake of time, but there's a lot of good stuff in there that I just skipped, but we're going to skip it for right now. Okay. The third and final step to creating lasting change within ourselves is to engage in regular self-reflection. Change requires processing, because processing is how we remember or internalize what we learned. You want to process repeatedly so it truly sticks with you. It's just like studying for a test. The more you review the information, in this case, what you learned about yourself from the situation, right? The more you will remember what you need to do differently next time. When you fail to process your experiences, you fail to learn vital information about your mental and behavioral habits. And if you don't have that knowledge, how can you progressively work towards change? You can't, right? So we want to make sure we're engaging in self-reflection. Being with self, spending time with self is imperative for these reasons. Those are opportunities for us to see our areas of growth. I love calling it areas of growth because, again, I'm always trying to decrease feelings of toxic shame around these things, because somebody who's struggling with, and I cover toxic shame in the book, if you don't know what it is, but I don't have, it's what it sounds like it is. But basically it's when your experiences through trauma have altered the way you see that emotion for the worse. Like now you have like a rejection of it instead of a curiosity of it, or you might be very hard on yourself in ways that are not actually productive, right? But I want people to remember that emotions like shame, guilt, regret, they exist to actually aid in our self-development. Of course, you're not supposed to use them to weaponize or destroy yourself, but you are supposed to acknowledge when they're present, right? Because it's helping you see areas in which you want to keep evolving, and you can. So listening to what is it communicating to me, and that's a part of emotional intelligence. Okay, and so speaking of which, one last thing I guess I'll read before I go that relates to what I just said. Actually, give me 1 second, y'all, because I do have to send a very quick message to my client for the sake of time. Okay. All right. So one of the last things I guess I'll read before I hop off that was coming to mind is one of my favorites. I want to read what happens in your mind when you suppress. Yeah, I think that was so important. Lisa, thank you so much for your purchases. I cannot wait to get your book to you. I will be packing everything today and have it in the mail tomorrow. I try to do it fast. I don't want you all to have to wait. So thank you. And if it was a signed copy, I look forward to writing you your personal message. For people who are just coming in, my signed copies are not just me signing my name, it's me writing a personal message to you. So if you're interested in that, that is something that's available in the TikTok shop. And again, if you want to learn more about the book, please just swipe through the photos. I intentionally put things in the listing in the TikTok shop listing to help answer questions you might have about the book. Okay. Oh, actually, really quick before I read the other thing I was going to read, I am going to read the special message to my non-Black readers, because usually I read this every time I'm on live, just for people who are wondering, like, is this book for me too if I'm not Black? And the answer is yes, but I'm going to read what I wrote here for you. Okay. So a special message to my non-Black readers. Thank you so much for choosing to read Bold, Black, and Becoming, and for supporting a Black author. Since psychology applies to everyone, anybody, regardless of race or culture, can benefit from the mental health knowledge and tools I share in this book. Hopefully, you will learn a lot of valuable information that will be useful during the rest of your healing and growth journey. Along with the mental health benefits, you will also increase your awareness of Black experiences, and it may shed light on your areas of privilege. Of course, we all face hardships and have some privileges, but many of us have more privileges than others due to multiple factors, including race. We hear the word privilege and some people cringe. It's like, but that's just a reality. And if we want to do something about that reality, we have to acknowledge that that does happen, right? Like I experience privileges by being a doctor in this society, right? Or once people find out, because my Blackness that they can see without me saying anything sometimes affects how they treat me before they even figure that out. But it shouldn't be that way. So the whole point is we have to recognize that people and their biases, stereotypes, and hate is affecting people's lives differently. So it shouldn't be that way, but we have to first acknowledge it to change it, right? Okay, anyway. Someone else's pain does not invalidate our own, just as someone else's success doesn't mean our accomplishments are less significant. Our suffering should not be a source of competition, but a source of empathy. We all deserve to be seen and validated. Your decision to read this book shows that, in addition to caring about your mental health, you also care about understanding people who are different from you. I am so grateful for your willingness. When we empathize with each other, we create safe spaces for everyone. Our differences are some of the most beautiful parts of our humanity. However, we can only fully appreciate this when we live authentically, celebrate our uniqueness, and acknowledge each other's experiences. When we take the time to understand one another, we do less harm and deepen our human connections, ultimately making the world a better and more peaceful place for us all. Thank you so much for choosing to be part of this goal. So that's what the message says. And then I put a little heart. Right. So that's what this is. This is the special message to my non-Black readers. So it's just helping people understand that the book is still for you, but we also have to recognize the inequalities that are happening within society and how there is not enough representation for all humans, right? And so that's why we have books that have representation, but it doesn't mean that the mental health knowledge in it doesn't still apply to you. What happens when you suppress? Yeah, and why we're going to get into that right now. That's what I'm going to read for you right before I go. So we're going to hop to that. I like to let you all know what chapter this is from. So what happens in your mind when you suppress is in chapter 2. Chapter 2 of my book is called Healing Your Relationship with Yourself. And every chapter has like a little quote that I came up with that kind of set the tone for the chapter. So as you can see, it looks like that. So I'm talking about that right there, right? So I'm going to read that part before I read the subsection. So it says, for so long we have denied what makes us most human. Reconnecting with this part of ourselves is how we begin to heal, right? That's what it says. So it gives you a taste of what we're about to get into. So healing your relationship with yourself. But now we're going to read what happens in your mind when you suppress, because we need to understand this. Because a lot of us were taught to suppress our emotions, because the people around us did not have the skills to help us regulate, right? They didn't know how to deal with their own emotions. So they told you stop having them. But here's the problem. You can't stop having them. Your brain is producing emotion 24/7. So the solution cannot be to ignore something that's constant, right? The solution has to be to learn about it. So what happens when we suppress our emotions? Let's see. I paint a picture for you, okay? So this one is like an imagery. So follow the image as I read, okay? Imagine your mind is a room you are in charge of. Since your emotions show up without your permission, they enter the room, which is again your mind, as they please. You can't lock the door. Even if you could, they would just come through the window. The only thing in your control is what you do after they show up. Once they get in, you must decide whether you will acknowledge their presence and engage with them. They will still be in the room with you, even if you choose to do neither. Imagine something happens to you that causes hurt and disappointment to enter the room. You decide to ignore them because you wish they weren't there. So you turn your back on them and entertain the emotions you like, such as happiness. Hurt and disappointment quickly recognize they are being ignored, and it pisses them off. After all, they matter just as much as your positive emotions. Hurt and disappointment are now in the part of the room you have your back turned to. This blind spot represents your subconscious. Seeking revenge, these ignored emotions begin affecting, and I have revenge in quotes because it's like these emotions are part of you. They're not actually trying to like hurt you, right? But if you were never taught what to do with them, right, it can feel like they're seeking revenge on you, but it really is just because you ignored them. And so now they're wreaking havoc, right? So seeking revenge, these ignored emotions begin affecting you subconsciously by influencing your behaviors, your thoughts, and other emotions without your full awareness. Some part of you knows they're in the room, but you still refuse to turn around and acknowledge them. Because of this, they get to control you instead of you being in charge of them. Over time, you become angry and irritable because of the influence hurt and disappointment have over you. Anger is often a mask we use to avoid feeling more vulnerable emotions like hurt and disappointment. You start to convince yourself this is just your attitude instead of acknowledging the deeper cause. Sure, you accept that anger has entered the room, which is good because we're not ignoring anger, so that's good. But you still don't address hurt and disappointment, which is bad, right? Because we're still ignoring and suppressing, so that's not good. Anger feels safer, but refusing to acknowledge what caused the anger in the first place prevents you from working through all that you feel. Of course, the actual cause of your mood and behavior shifts is the hurt and disappointment you never dealt with, right? But now you might be losing track, right? Because you suppressed those emotions a while ago, and now you just feeling angry and irritable, and you don't even remember what was going on because you didn't deal with the things when they actually happened. So they're just like festering, right? So, of course, the actual cause of your mood and behavior shifts is the hurt and disappointment you never dealt with. They're running wild and free through your subconscious mind, and they're still furious that you've ignored them. They want to know why they aren't important to you, why you don't treat them the way you treat happiness. After all, they're part of you too, and they're trying to communicate something to you, right? They begin to feel unstoppable, and you desperately try to find an easy out for some sense of relief. The more time goes on, the more hurt and disappointment demand your attention by acting out further. They flip tables, throw things, and scream. They will continue to make your life hell until you acknowledge them. You start drinking more or using sex as a distraction, anything to get some relief. You just want them to leave already. However, these avoidance behaviors only provide temporary respite and cause more emotions to enter, leading to even more chaos in your mind because there's no shortcuts to healing, right? So you're trying to distract yourself to get a quick feel of that, like feeling better in some kind of quick way through these distractions, but you still have not addressed what's actually causing your pain. We see this all the time. We especially see this with innocent little boys who were taught toxic masculinity. Why do you think it's not just a coinky dink, y'all, that people that are especially heterosexual males statistically have some of the highest rates of substance abuse and promiscuity? Because what are you running from? Your emotions that people told you didn't have, the pain that you never dealt with, right? Because people told you to pretend that you weren't a human being. And now decades into doing that, right, you are drowning. And all of that emotion you did not deal with, all that pain you're not dealing with, all the lies you've been telling yourself to distract yourself from your own humanity. So we see the cause of this. Hey, Papa's ice cream truck is in here. Hi, friend. And I caught your live earlier today. So like we have to see what's happening right in front of us. When you train or condition human beings to believe that their humanity is optional, bad things will happen to you, right? Bad things will happen to them. It is not optional. We all have the same parts to our brain. We all even have the same hormones, just in different amounts. I can't tell you how many people's mouth drops when I'm like, you do know everyone has testosterone, right? You can literally Google that. Everybody, everyone. It's at different levels, sure. But why do you think there are humans who have XX chromosomes, so we label female at birth, that also can have what's called PCOS? You know what's causing that, right? Higher levels of testosterone. But everybody has testosterone. Everyone has estrogen. We are united in our humanity. And I also often give this example because it helps it click for people too. If the human brain was so different between men, women, and whoever, wouldn't we then need brain surgeons that just focused on male brains? If it was so different, right? If it was this vast difference, wouldn't we need male brain surgeons and female brain surgeons and transgender surgeons? No, we don't need that because the parts and structures are the same. Sure, what's going on in neural connections and all of that differs. But your experiences, thanks for the love, Angel, even your experiences are shaping how your brain developed. Trauma is like toxic food to the brain, right? Whereas proper nurturing and teaching literally allows the brain to thrive. This is why when you look at the frontal lobe of somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder, you see less gray matter, you see less tend to see less complicated neural connections and things like that. The brain was not fed proper things. So there is absolutely an amount to this that is so preventable and in our control. But until we wake up and unlearn the nonsense we've been taught, that this idea that not all humans need to learn about emotions. Yes, they do. Have you ever been around infants? Show me an infant that does not express emotion. We'll be here forever. So why would genitalia does not cause you not to be a human being, right? So we're confusing. First of all, we confuse sex and gender. They're not the same thing, but I have to save that conversation for another day. Gender is a social construct, right? So, but we'll save it for another day, right? But we're also believing nonsense that was taught to us by people that don't know anything about the brain. We have to ask ourselves, who taught me about my brain? And when did they learn anything about the brain? Can this person even name anything that the brain does? If you say to them, quick, what does the hippocampus, I'll give you an easy one. What does the hippocampus do? They would be like, I don't know. Is it a hippo that goes to college? No, it's a part of your brain that deals with long-term memory consolidation, right? So like we have to recognize that although people were well-intentioned, they were teaching us things that they were taught by other people who didn't know what they were talking about. Just like you would not go to a mechanic and have them bake your birthday cake, unless they were also a baker and a good one. You should be weary of going to someone about mental health education that knows nothing about mental health, right? Because why are we doing that to ourselves? But we're not even thinking about where these beliefs came from. And so once we start waking up to that, and especially when you analyze how was the relationships of the people going that taught you these things, I bet it's probably not going very well because they're also lost in the effects of their trauma. And I want us to all see this through the lens of empathy, though. Like we have to have deep empathy because here's the thing. When we take the stance of somebody is just behaving this way because they want to ruin my life or they woke up to do this to me, we fail to see the big picture and we end up unintentionally also further mistreating that person, which decreases the likelihood of change within them anyway, right? So if we are also responding to them in a way that does not encourage any kind of growth or help them feel seen, here's the thing, all humans just desperately want to feel seen. All humans just desperately want to be their authentic selves, whether they realize it or not. But most humans are still walking around and their identity is a reflection of stereotypes of the current times. They absolutely have little to no idea of what they actually like or don't like, right? All of their likes and dislikes are rooted in stereotypes and nonsense. Like it's because the color blue does not belong to boys. The color blue arguably doesn't even really exist. I mean, it does and it doesn't, but it's the way our eyes are able to perceive color that even allow for it to exist, right? Right? The word blue is made up. It's a sound that we've given meaning to. So we're all fighting over made up things, right? And in reality, it's like, no, colors, you should like whatever color you like or thing you like. All the things around you are made up human inventions, right? I've given the example, I got to go in a moment, but I'm going to leave y'all with this. I've given the example that imagine if I invented something today for humanity to enjoy. And I said, but it can only be enjoyed by this small subset group of people that hold these identities. People would be really upset. Imagine if we said TV can now only be watched by people who are transgender. You'd be like, what? I like TV. Why can't I watch it? It's like, but that's what y'all are doing when you're like, oh, you can't like this invention. you can't like this thing that humans made for humans to enjoy. And I have not missed this part about live. Also, here's the thing, y'all. If you're new here, let me say this too. I can't stop people from saying nonsense in the comments. And I understand that it's a reflection of something triggered within you that I hope you'll explore, because I didn't do anything to you for you to be disrespectful. But what I will say is that it's not going to affect me the way that you think it would. There are older versions of me that it would, right? But I now understand that it's a reflection of you being hurt in some kind of way. And I really, really hope that you find healing and that you find community and safe spaces to be seen and nurtured in the ways you deserve, right? It's like, it's crazy what people will say on here sometimes, but it's also a reflection of like so many people have been hurt so bad that they feel so angry, so triggered, they don't even understand why. And I have deep empathy for you. It is not fun not understanding your inner experiences. It's not. And it's so hard to navigate life, and you're mad and you're angry and you don't know why. And it's really sad to be stuck in a place like that. And I know that because I have in the past been stuck in places like that. So I still love you, but I'm not going to let you disrespect me either. So, but yeah, anyway, hi, best friend. Hi, best friend. Well, I do have to go, y'all, because it's 5 o'clock. I just realized. Thank y'all so much for being here. I didn't get to finish reading the what happens in your mind when you suppress, but as you get the picture, right? Those emotions that you refuse to deal with, they will influence and impact you in ways you're not recognizing until you address it. Once you address it, that's how you actually are able to move through and heal, right? So that's what we want to be doing. Suppression and ignoring causes those things to continue to control and impact you without your full awareness, and that can lead to all kinds of things that you don't want to actually be happening in your life, including picking up bad habits to try to cope, right? Like substance abuse and things like that. So this is why we want to learn how to embrace and work with our emotions. And everyone in here listening and everyone in the world, I firmly believe deserves to be their best self. And I know that it starts with us understanding how we've gotten here. And we've largely gotten here by mental health neglect and perpetual cycles of trauma. And I try my best to be a reflection of what the world needs, which is to understand that nobody is in my opinion, a bad person, but they can be doing very bad things. And it's because they're a lost soul. And I don't think we get anywhere by not acknowledging the fact that they're a lost soul and hoping that through some kind of education and holding people accountable, that they will wake up and start healing. So, but yeah, I do have to go. Love you guys. I will see you all again soon. I'll try to hop on again soon. I didn't get a chance to do what I was going to do over here, y'all. But if you want to go follow my other TikTok page, just search Dr. Abena Berry. Like this one is the shop page for my TikTok shop, but I have another page where I share mental health content all the time. So you'll want to follow me over there as well. Just type the Dr. Abena Berry without the shop word and it will pop up. Yeah, it has like, you'll know you're in the right place because it has like 47,000 followers. So it's a bigger page because this one's new. So thank y'all for following me over here on my shop page because it is new. But I'll see you all again soon. I love you all. Remember to move through the world with empathy and kindness, and remember to hold people accountable directly but thoughtfully. Yeah, we have to be a reflection of the change that's needed. So, but yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Let me hop off of these 3 devices. Bye. 1. Oh, hi, YouTube. Yes, hello. Bye, y'all. Love you guys. 2. And I'm so glad some people joined over here on YouTube. I'm still growing my YouTube page, so thank y'all for being here and joining as well. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.